This is a video for how to go about creating a drawing of your exploded view from your woodblock assembly with balloons and a parts list in Fusion 360. In a previous video, we have gone in and created a assembly of these different wood blocks, and then also we've gone into the animation feature category and created kind of this exploded view of how we put these blocks together. So what we want to do now is we want to create for ourselves a drawing of these parts. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up to File, and we're going to go down to New Drawing from Animation, and it's over here. It's going to say Storyboard, and it's going to say Storyboard 1. Now we could make different storyboards. I didn't go into making different storyboards, but you could have this rotated a different way. You could have different exploded things going on, but we only really had one storyboard within this, so we're just going to stay there. I have created in another video a PLTW title block that we will use for this. You can choose whichever template you wish, but for this we're going to use the PLTW title block, and I'm going to say OK. If you don't have that title block, it's totally fine. So once we get into here, you'll notice that I can see, those trails. I can see my exploded view, and I want to go ahead and place this. And we're going to make sure we have this shaded. We're going to start with that. Now you could do a different orientation if you wanted, but I like this orientation. It meets with our view cube, so we'll keep it there. We could change the scale. You can try to improve the view quality just a little bit, maybe make the the graphics just a little bit better by checking that. And we could check the scale, but we're not going to, and we're going to say OK. And what we can see now is a pretty good representation, or maybe even an exact representation of how our view would be put together, because we have these trails along this x-axis and this y-axis here of how we would put together the part. This is a good description for someone of, hey, here's how we would put this thing together. You'll also see I got all my different components over here, and you'll notice that I have this thing right here that basically means we're taking this from an assembly. So this woodblock assembly is kind of what we would call the parent file, and then everything underneath there, the parent file is dependent upon. You can't have an assembly without components, and these are the 4 components that make that assembly. Now for our next step, we're going to place a parts list, because I want to know which one of these is the bridge, which one's a cylinder, which one's a rectangle, and the triangle. And I know we know that just by looking at it, but we're going to pretend for the sake of discussion somebody would not. And we're going to click on tables up here, and we're going to go down to parts list. And when we click on parts list, you're going to see this kind of table show up, and it's going to say selected, and it's going to say a first level structure. We're not going to go too heavily into that, but if you had something with just 1,000,000 parts or 1,000 parts, you could get way more into the weeds with that. For the sake of the video, we won't. I want to snap this up into the top right hand corner, and you're going to see it gave us this parts list. And you can see I got these things over here called balloons. I can see that part 1 here is the bridge. I can come up here, oh, that's blue. It's not going to pull a description for you at the beginning. I'll explain some of that later in the video. But for description, I called it the color. The material in Fusion defaults to steel. So you're going to see steel is the material. We could go back and change that to wood and have it update. Just for the sake of the video, we won't. But it's pulling information from the properties menu is what it's doing. So you'll notice we have a quantity. We only have 1 of each wood block. If I had 2 cylinders, like you'd see a 2 right here next to cylinder. Now, the balloons give us an arrow. It's almost like you're pointing at something. Like if someone asks you, like, hey, which one is the cylinder? You could take a finger and point at it. That's what balloons do. Now, we don't want balloons going through objects, and we also don't, we want them to be diagonal. We never want a balloon to be a horizontal line or a vertical line. And I kind of want to bring these in just a little close. So you can tap on the outside edge of the circle and drag these in kind of closer. There's no need for us to drag one way off like that. And we're going to drag it. For this one right here with the way it placed, I don't like the fact that it's going through the rectangle, so I'm going to drag this over here. And I also don't like the fact that this line's going through the object. We don't want any of our lines to go through objects unless we absolutely otherwise could not avoid it. So I can click down on this joint and kind of drag it over here to the edge, and it's going to snap to the edge. I can kind of drag this around a little bit if I want to, if this was going up into here, I have the freedom to move these parts, these balloons a little bit, kind of drag them around. So you'll notice that we now have for ourselves a nice little exploded view that explains a lot of things very well. Now for the rectangular prism, it's green, and up here I don't have anything for the description for green or anything. So on the left hand side of the screen, I'm going to double click on rectangular prism, and let's open that up. And when I open up rectangular prism, we want to change the description to say green. So we're going to come up and right click on rectangular prism, and we're going to go down to properties. Then over here on the right, we have to actually tap on the rectangular prism for this to populate. And you'll notice in the properties menu that I've got all things down here as far as physical properties. We get into that more in later lessons. You can get into item numbers and things, but for description up here, I want to write the word green. And I'm going to say close. And I'm going to go ahead and just hit save. Let's make sure we all hit save, and we're going to say OK, and then I'm going to get out of this part. I just want to get out of the part. Now, parts lists populate from reading other things, and you'll see over where it says rectangle, and it says your component's out of date. To update, use get latest in the design workspace. We'll go back to that in a second. The triangle is red, so let's double click on my triangle. You can do these for the other two that I hadn't done already. I'm going to right click on triangle. I'm going to go down to properties here. I'm going to tap on the triangle, and when we get the populate here, I'm just going to write the word red, and I'm going to say close, and I'm going to say save. I'm going to say OK. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. So once we get out of there, you'll notice again over here it says, you changed two things. And it's saying, you have to use get latest in the design workspace. So when I go back to woodblock assembly, you can see it's going to tell me that I have something to update. Now, we're in the animation workspace. We're not in the design workspace. So we're going to go back to design workspace. And up here at the top, you're going to see this yellow triangle that goes, you've updated something. Do you want to update your assembly? And the reason why we have to go back to the assembly is we can't have an assembly without parts, and we just updated the parts. And the parent view of an assembly is what you see right here. You can see these kind of little blocks. This is an assembly. Again, you can't have an assembly without components, and you can't have an exploded view without an assembly. And then you cannot have a parts list without an assembly either. So when we're back here, I'm going to click on this two components are out of date. Click here to update all the out of date references. And I'm going to click, and you're going to see those little update things go away. When I come back over to our drawing sheet, and I come back into here, let's say save. Let's make sure we save this. Actually, let's go back to our assembly. Maybe we didn't save back here. Let's go back to our assembly over here. Let's make sure we click save. That's one thing I didn't do. You got to click save each time. My bad, got one quick step ahead. Go back to your assembly, make sure you click save. And let's go back and let's say update up here. And once we say update, you'll see it spin for a second. Should see things come in and auto-populate. And now we have for our description. Again, the issue I didn't have was that I didn't come in and I didn't save. So once we go through and we update anything with our parts, we have to go back to the assembly and update that, and then we're going to see our parts list update. So this is kind of coming off the screen here just a little bit. I kind of want to drag this down. You can make this and move this, whatever you think is the best view for the person who might be looking at it, because that's the whole point of creating a drawing sheet like this is, we want someone who's going to have to put this thing together to absolutely not miss how we could put this together. So we could take the 4 blocks that we used to create this assembly and give them to somebody and say, hey, put this together exactly the way I did, and they could do it. Excellent communication tool for how to assemble a part. So this has been a video for how to go about creating a drawing of an exploded view with a parts list and editing descriptions in Fusion 360.